My girlfriend and I lived in a small gated community in southern West Virginia called Glade Springs. The community has about 150 houses, a country club, and a steakhouse bar called Bunkers. Now, anyone can come through the gate during the business hours and of Bunkers, but after they close, the front security gate stops all traffic and makes sure that you're a resident. If you're a visitor, they call the house that you're going to verify that you're actually expecting them. Sometimes it can be a hassle, but hey, I don't have to worry about a robbery. So imagine my surprise when my doorbell chimed at 3 a.m. I was jarred awake and wasn't sure if it was just a dream, considering I had just went to bed shortly before and was probably going into REM sleep. I rolled over and looked at the clock, noticing the time. When my doorbell chimed again, I felt a cold chill run through my body. Not reading too much into it. Could be one of the neighbors. They have as an emergency or anything. I nonchalantly made my way to the door. Now see how foolish I really was. And opened it. Luckily, the wrought iron storm door was still locked, because who or what stood before me was not a resident of the community. Two young boys stood at my doorstep, one looking at about 17, another about 10, wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt and jeans. The young one had shaggy, dirty blonde hair and would only look down at the stone steps. And the other one had his hood and his head tipped to where I could only see half from his nose down. My voice caught in my throat, and before I could even ask what they wanted, the older one spoke. His voice sounded forced and dry. There was no emotion, no sincerity of what he said. I'm sorry to bother you and your girlfriend, but we need to come in to use your phone. We've been in an accident. I felt the familiar chill return to my whole body. How did he know my girlfriend was here? I wrote it off as my Tahoe and her Volkswagen was in the driveway, and I figured they just assumed. I tripped over my words. Something about these kids just weren't right, weren't normal, and wasn't human. I can bring you my cell phone, and you can call. I don't get service inside here, so you'll have to stand out on the sidewalk to call, I finally said nervously. Of course, I was lying through my clenched teeth. I did not want these kids in my house. Well, my brother really needs to use your bathroom, Kane. We have to come in, the older one said. And that's when I went into complete panic. He knew my name. I'm sorry, are you from here? How did you know my name? The words practically shook out of my mouth. That's when he became slightly hostile and demanded to be let inside. I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't help him. And just as I was about to close the main door is when it happened. The both of them snapped their heads upwards and looked at me straight in the eyes. Black. No iris, no pupil, no retina. Just pure, deep black. I was paralyzed with fear. For a second, I thought those kids were just playing a really cruel joke, and it snuck in the community somehow and had brought some of those freaky supernatural demon contact lenses. That wasn't until I heard ringing. It was like a ringing sound that you hear when you have a hearing test done, that digital high-pitched shrill ringing. And then the flashback started. I was suddenly a toddler again at my grandparents' house, sitting under a chestnut tree with my mother picking up the nuts and putting them in a large metal soup kettle. It was a crisp fall day. It's one of my earliest, dearest memories. I was about 3 and even have a picture, and one I hold very dear to my heart. But then they were there, behind my mother. We locked eyes, their eyes still black as night, and suddenly they smiled simultaneously. That's when everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was shaken awake, lying in the mudroom floor. My girlfriend standing over me with a worried look. "What the heck, Kane?" she asked. I had no idea how to answer her. My head had taken a good whack against the slate floor, and a bit of dry blood was stuck to my hair. But other than that, I was fine physically. I slowly remembered everything and what happened, and looked at the door. Daylight. I'd never been so glad to see morning in all my life. I told my girlfriend everything that happened, and I honestly think she thought I had brain damage from hitting the floor. But she insisted she believed me. And then we Googled it, and I believe that's when she really started to believe me. It was right then. I don't know who or what they were, or where they come from, but they're not of this world. I know that for a fact. For some reason, I had a lingering thought. Still not sure if they put a thought in my head or not, that they wanted me to know that even my memories aren't safe. They're very strong and seem to be growing in numbers. For some reason, they seem to not be able to hurt you physically unless you invite them in. Which, I don't know, since either no one has ever let them in, or the ones that have aren't around to tell their story anymore. But they can get your mind. And since that night, I feel as though I'm being watched. I see them out of the corner of my eye occasionally. I look at my girlfriend while we're at the movies or at dinner, and her eyes will be solid black for a split second. And worst of all, they took my most precious and most often reminisced memories and turned it into something sinister.
When I was a kid, my family and I went to see a relative on Christmas Eve to open presents. This was in West Virginia in the late 2000s, I think, and I remember it being dark at the time. On the way to our destination, we were driving past what looked like a natural slope between two mountains by the roadside. This spot was also near a railroad crossing. We saw 3 large red floating lights. At first, we thought that it was a new cell phone tower. But then the lights began to move ever so slightly. And when we saw that they weren't attached to anything, my father pulled the car over and we all stared at the lights for a while, trying to figure out what they were as they hovered gently back and forth over the same spot between the mountains. We could see now that there wasn't a cell phone tower there, but none of us at the time jumped at the idea of it being a UFO. We still thought it might have been part of the landscape or something. We figured we would check it again on our way home and see if it was still there, and headed off to my relatives for Christmas Eve. Of course, on the way back, the 3 red lights were completely gone. Therefore, it couldn't have been part of the hillside. It was most likely something flying, though it could still be something explainable in an ordinary way. It was only years later, after my interest in anomalies, that I remembered this story of something that happened to me and my family. For a long time, I held off telling the story, thinking, well, that doesn't count. But when compared to most UFO reports, I'm pretty sure it counts just as much as those do.
Sometime in fall 2020, I almost run face to face into myself from about 5 minutes earlier. I was fully awake and had just showered, then got dressed for work. I was on my way back to the bathroom to fix my hair and brush my teeth. As I stepped into the hallway, literally me stepped out of the bathroom. I ran almost directly into myself. It obviously scared the crap out of me. I jumped back and screamed. I jumped back hard enough that I physically hit the wall. The copy of myself was just wrapped in a towel like, I had been just a few minutes before. The copy of me disappeared as quickly as it appeared, and the whole interaction just lasted about a second or two. I always had weird experiences following me. I first went ghost hunting in late middle school and early high school. As I grew up hearing about stories and paranormal happenings in my family's past. So, interested and always, just kind of being around it, I had a number of paranormal events happen throughout my life. Starting in middle school, it still happened occasionally. I would be very interested to find others that had had the same nearly run into doppelganger experience I did. Some digging around online around the time it happened, but never really found anything close. On September 12th, 1952, around 7 o'clock on Friday evening, a group of young boys consisting of Eugene Lemon, 17, Neil Nunley, 14, Eddie May, 13, Freddie May, 10, and Ronnie Shaver, also 10, were playing football on the lawn of Flatwoods Elementary School. Suddenly, the group saw what they described as a fireball fly quickly overhead and appear to land vertically on a nearby hilltop just past the Fisher farm. The boys were in disbelief. They weren't sure if what they had just seen was a flying saucer, a meteorite, an airplane crash. Did people need help? Should they report it? The boys run to Eddie and Freddie's grandparents' house. Their mother, Kathleen May, was there at the time. The boys explained the story to the relatives. Kathleen May joined the group of boys and headed out to the hilltop where the mysterious object had appeared to land. On the way up the steep hill, they noticed a pulsating or flashing light, accompanied by loud hissing and banging sounds. Once they got a bit closer, they noticed a terrible sulfuric smell. The group finally came up on the object they saw previously and found out right away it was not a meteorite. To their surprise, it was some type of craft. At this point, the group decided it might be best to get out of there. But before leaving, they noticed movement next to a nearby tree. They shined a flashlight toward the movement, and that's when they saw the creature. It was about 12 feet tall, with a round, blood-red face and bright, glowing eyes that illuminated the entire area. It also had a helmet or shroud over its head, described as being shaped like the ace of spades of a playing card deck. The rest of its body appeared to be made up of some type of green metallic material. It was terrifying, so they began to run. As they were trying to get away, it sprayed them with some kind of oil. The creature did not walk, but hovered after them. The group managed to escape unharmed, but each member felt sick for several days after the incident. And unsurprisingly, the media had a field day with this incident, and the group, now known as the Seven, became quite famous. They even traveled as far as New York City to appear on talk shows to discuss what they saw.
I grew up 30 minutes south of the former West Virginia State Penitentiary. My grandfather worked there for a bit when he moved back to the area. My father's first haircut was given to him by an inmate that was serving time for murdering his wife and mother-in-law by tying them up and pushing them into a wood stove. Because of my proximity to it growing up, I probably toured the penitentiary a half a dozen times. Each time, I just had an uneasy feeling while touring it. Fast forward to 2019, and I get an opportunity to tour and get some pictures with my new camera. I was ready for a great tour. I had my camera, 2 backup batteries I had charged that morning, and I had a couple of different lenses. The tour was going great until the guide let me go into the kitchen area. Typically, it's off limits for tours due to the roof leaking and the wet floors being a liability issue. They made an exception because I was the only one on the tour this time. The guide told me I could explore the kitchen and freezer areas, and when I was done, all I had to do was take a left and I'd be back at the cafeteria. I took some pictures in the kitchen and started down the hallway where the freezers are. The hallway was pretty dark. When I attempted to take a picture, my camera gave a weird message that the object I was trying to photograph was too close to be focused on. I tried taking another picture and tried to focus, but then it gave me the same error message. I gave up and tried changing to my low light lens. When I tried taking another picture, it didn't even try to focus. It gave me the same message, too close to focus. I turned and took a picture of the kitchen from the hallway, and that picture was perfectly fine. I turned back around and got the same focusing message again. I turned it out of autofocus and forced it to take a picture. For some reason, it was super grainy and the lighting was weird. I tried to take another one and my screen came up blank. No error, no low battery warning. It was just black. I tried swapping out the batteries for one I had charged earlier this morning. It was dead. I tried the other backup battery, also dead. Eventually, I made my way back around to the tour guide. He asked me if I got any good pictures. I told him my batteries died, and he looked completely unfazed. All he asked was, "How much power does your phone have?" I pulled out my phone that I had charged on my way there. It had been 100% when I started an hour prior. It was now down to 8% and in power saving mode. When I told him about that, he just shrugged and told me that's why they no longer go in the kitchen area. Apparently, it's notorious for draining electronics. I still haven't been able to explain what happened since then, and I have taken pictures in darker places without having a similar issue. Wow-wee! What did y'all think of these? These were some incredible stories. Mostly fan-submitted stories. We've got that classic Flatwoods monster story in there, but man, that black-eyed kid story, that one's nightmare fuel, pure nightmare fuel. And then that doppelganger encounter, man, that was a good one. We've had a couple of doppelganger encounters lately, hadn't we? And then, let's see. Yeah, Flatwoods Monster, definitely a good one. Good classic. And that one from West Virginia State Penitentiary, that's a good one. It was sent to us a long time ago by a fan, one of our first stories. So big thanks to the fellow that sent that in. And if you like the story, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share it out with all your friends. And if you've got a story, you can send it in to SpookyAppalachia@gmail.com. And thank y'all for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next one. Good night, folks. Oh, and stay spooky.